What did Duke Leto see in Arrakis' red haze that shattered his resolve? The Emperor's command transferred him there, a trap veiled as duty. As Paul's bare feet sank into the dunes, the Baron plotted in his suspensor chamber, Dr. Yue's treachery already woven into the sand. Leto knew his house would fall. He only wished the desert could swallow more than his blood. Dune's Leto traced the stars' cold script, plotted in his each suspensor orbit a verse chamber. Whisper. The Bene Gesserit's tapestry wove backward through time, thousands of years of puppets pulling at his strings. Did he curse the day thinking machines died? The Orange Catholic edict against AI, born of ash and war, had sealed his fate. A world without thinking machines, yet filled with thinkers too blind to see. He raised his blade, knowing it would rust with his blood. The desert did not swallow empires, it buried them, patient as the sands. What good is a Red Duke's rage when the stars have already written his end? Leto fought not to win, but to delay the moment the universe exhaled his name. Duke Leto Atreides did not inherit Arrakis, he was placed there. The Emperor's command was clear: govern the spice, govern the Fremen. Leto's mind, sharp as a crysknife, mapped the dunes. He saw the spice as both weapon and currency. He courted the Fremen with reverence, learning their ways while the Imperium's gears ground unseen. Mentat's calculated yields. Bene Gesserit watched from shadows. The Spacing Guild demanded tribute. The Tleilaxu whispered. Each pillar of the Imperium leaned on the next, a house of cards built on trust and terror. Leto balanced them all. He knew the spice was not his to keep. He knew the guild needed its stranglehold, the Emperor his puppet. Yet he wove alliances like a weaver of stillsuits, each thread a gamble. The Fremen called him Listen Al-Gaib, the distant teacher. They did not yet know he was their bridge to godhood. Leto did. He saw the path a house must burn to forge its heir. But fire consumes. The Imperium's fragility was its design. A single thread pulled guild loyalty, a Mentat's miscalculation, a Bene Gesserit's whisper could unravel the tapestry. Leto walked this knife's edge, his vision vast, his dread silent. He built while the walls closed, he bargained while the noose tightened. Did he believe his sun would rise, or was it a dirge, a strategy etched in blood and hope? The dunes held his answers. The spice, that double-edged sacrament, would crown his heir or bury him. Leto's brilliance was not in avoiding the fall. It was in ensuring the legacy survived the collapse. The Red Duke bled for a future he would not see. The Imperium, blind to its own rot, did not notice until the sand was already in its throat. Duke Leto Atreides did not inherit Arrakis, he was placed there. The Emperor's command was clear: govern the spice, govern the Fremen. Leto's mind, sharp as a crysknife, mapped the dunes. He saw the spice as both weapon and currency. He courted the Fremen with reverence, learning their ways while the Imperium's gears ground unseen. Mentat's calculated yields. Bene Gesserit watched from shadows. The Spacing Guild demanded tribute. The Tleilaxu whispered. Each pillar of the Imperium leaned on the next, a house of cards built on trust and terror. Leto balanced them all. He knew the spice was not his to keep. He knew the guild needed its stranglehold, the Emperor his puppet. Yet he wove alliances like a weaver of stillsuits, each thread a gamble. The Fremen called him Listen Al-Gaib, the distant teacher. They did not yet know he was their bridge to godhood. Leto did. He saw the path a house must burn to forge its heir, but fire consumes. The Imperium's fragility was its design. A single thread pulled guild loyalty, a Mentat's miscalculation, a Bene Gesserit's whisper could unravel the tapestry. Leto walked this knife's edge, his vision vast, his dread silent. He built while the walls closed, he bargained while the noose tightened. Did he believe his sun would rise, or was it a dirge, a strategy etched in blood and hope? The dunes held his answers. The spice, that double-edged sacrament, would crown his heir or bury him. Leto's brilliance was not in avoiding the fall. It was in ensuring the legacy survived the collapse. The Red Duke bled for a future he would not see. The Imperium, blind to its own rot, did not notice until the sand was already in its throat. The betrayal came not with a blade but a whisper. Doctor. Yue, his hands still stained with the blood of Leto's guards, had once sworn loyalty with a kiss to the Duke's own son. Leto knew. He knew the moment Paul's eyes widened, the way the boy's breath hitched as prescience clawed at his Mindasir's curse, not a gift. The Red Duke did not flinch. He only watched the sand shift beneath his boots, the Fremen wind carrying the stench of betrayal like a funeral shroud. Paul's visions had grown sharper since the spice. Leto saw them, his wife's throat slit, his heir's blood soaking into dunes, the Sardakar's black armor glinting like a promise of oblivion. Yet he spoke no warning. To name the truth would be to bind Paul to it, to let the boys will bend under the weight of what must come. Leto's choice was not in the battle, but in the silence. When the Harkonnen poisons took Lady Jessica, when the Sardaukar siege turned the palace to ash, Leto did not fight. He stood in the courtyard, his crimson cloak billowing like a flag of surrender, and welcomed the first strike. The bolt from Yue's gun was a mercy. To die by the hand of a man who had once mixed medicine for his children, that was a king's final irony. The sand buried him quickly, as it buries all things. His name, his line, his warning soul erased by the very future he had tried to soften. Paul survived, Paul saw. The boy who had wept at his father's corpse now walks with the burden of 1,000 lives, each vision a chain. Prescience does not grant freedom. It carves paths in stone, and Paul must tread them or drown in the tide of what asterisk could asterisk be. The Duke's blood is gone, but his choice lingers, a warning etched in the bones of a desert that never forgets. What father would not trade his soul to spare his son the weight of the stars? Leto's answer was written in the sand. It is written still. The Bene Gesserit's plan was etched in blood and spice, centuries before Leto's first breath. He traced their hand in the stars, in Paul's eyes, in the Iraq's burning aftertaste. A king's death bought a dynasty's rebirth. What does a god do when the harvest is not his own? Leto's fall was the seed. Beneath the dunes, empires take root. The blade slipped between ribs, not a screamingly a breath, cut short, doctor. Yue's hands, once steady with House Atreides' trust, dripped with the Red Duke's blood. The betrayal was not a strike, but a symphony. Sardaukar boots crunching spice beneath Arakine's ruins, Harkonnen chains glinting like serpents in the dust. Leto fell as he had lived upright, unbroken, his final gaze not on death, but on the fragile threads of an empire he could not mend. Paul, 10 years old, ran, his father's sword, hot with blood, burned in his grip. The desert swallowed him whole, a boy forged by fear into a name whispered in Harkonnen cells. Aelia, her mind a cage of Bene Gesserit poison, clawed at the walls of madness. Sisters called her prodigy. The wind howled her screams. Siona, youngest, was sold a pawn in the guild's silence, her name erased beneath the Bene Gesserit's needle and ink. The Imperium's architects had built on sand. Mentats calculated but missed the rot in human hearts. The guild navigated fixed stars, yet let their own shadows strangle a duke. Tlalexu weavers spun lies as deftly as silk. Fragility was not a flaw, it was a design. Leto's body fed the dunes, his blood, a map the Red Duke had known. Knew the cost of power bought with trust, knew the price of a god's birth is a father's death, the empire's pulse quickened. Beneath the spice, beneath the silence, something stirred. A god does not weep, but the desert remembers every drop. The Red Duke bled into the sands, his son walked the dunes, a boy became a storm. Paul Atreides shed his name like a desert snake Muad'Dib rose, a god wrath scything through Harkonnen bones. The Fremen knelt, the empire trembled. Yet even gods hunger. Paul's visions gnawed at Himspis-fueled, endless, a labyrinth without exit. He saw the end, he saw the choice. To break the cycle or become its executioner. A generation later, Leto Roman II Atreides crawled, not on hands and knees. On sand trout tendrils, his flesh fused with the desert itself. The golden path demanded a monster, his eyes crystallized. His voice became a dirge, he knew the cost, he had to. The Bene Gesserit's plan unspooled in his marrow a tapestry of centuries, woven with Atreides' blood. Leto's evolution was no triumph. It was a shroud, a king trapped in his own crown. What did the Red Duke see in his final breath? Not defeat. A mirror, Paul's blade, Leto's grotesque form, 12 faces of the same coin. The house that clutched power too tightly always crumbles. The Bene Gesserit smiled, their game stretched beyond empires, beyond spice. A species passage, a trial by fire, Leto's legacy, a warning. No Atreides escapes the dance, not the man who loved a planet, not the god who drowned in his own visions. Not the half-beast who outran time. The sands remember. They whisper, asterisk power is not a river, it is a grave. And the Atreides are its eternal tenants. Asterisk the cycle turns, the path glows, the desert waits. The golden path is a tomb. Leto's ghost walks it, a shadow between choice and fate. The famine time still starves the stars. Leto Roman II reign carved hunger into Lawa tyrants' arithmetic, balancing the scales of survival. Bene Gesserit sisters now stitch their order back from threads of ruin. Honored Matter's return forced their hand, reshaping their plan into something unrecognizable. Leto Atreides foresaw the fall, yet the price of his vision was a house reduced to ash and myth. His prescience was no gift, it was a mirror cracked, reflecting endings he could not unsee. The desert still holds his name. The path still glows it or runs red. Atreides is not blood, but warning. Power is a grave, and graves do not stay quiet. The cycle turns, the path glows, the desert waits. Duke Leto bled the color of dawn. He saw the noose tighten. He saw the spice turn his son's voice to a blade. Paul would drink the water of life and become its executioner. Trout a god with a father's gullet of vision, if not a glass. A god with a father's gullet of vision, if not a glass prison. Leto Atreides carried the future like a stone in his throat. He knew the Bene Gesserit's plan was not a path but a pendulum. His line would swing between savior and beast, each choice a scar on the same flesh. In 10,191 AG, Paul's name became a storm, a messiah born from a man who wept for his own failure. By 10,217 AG, Leto Roman II symbiosis birthed a monster who measured mercy in millimeters of sand. The golden path was not triumph. It was a wound dressed in gold. The Red Duke's prescience was no gift. It was a mirror cracked from the first breath of his house. He watched his descendants drown in the very truths he tried to outrun. A ruler who foresees collapse is a prophet with no altar. Leto's curse was to love his children into oblivion. What does a father do when the future is a funeral? He wears the color of his name. He bleeds the color of dawn, and he waits for the desert to swallow its own ghosts. How many mirrors must shatter before the cycle forgets its hunger? The desert does not forget. Leto Atreides saw the fall written in the dunes, a prophecy etched in thirst. He wore the Red Duke's mantle like a shroud, knowing every blade of honor would bleed his house dry. Charisma is a well in a drought sweet until the ground cracks. He raised a son to be a god. The son became a monster. Leto's vision cursed him, to witness the cost of saving a world. Power bends the wielder, not the other way. His prescience was a mirror, not a shield. Each choice a step closer to the abyss. The Bene Gesserit spun their web, but the true trap was the myth he helped create. A savior, a legend, a lie. The cycle gnaws its own tail. Leto's legacy is the warning carved into Arrakis' bones. To lead is to become the thing you fight. He who would rule the desert must first be devoured by it. Duke Leto Atreides bled crimson for a reason. The Red Duke saw the fall written in his own bloodline. Bene Gesserit schemes coiled like serpents. Honored Matters sharpened their blades in the same shadow. Both cults carved destiny with iron and egg, yet both failed to see the trap in their mutual hate. What collapses when the weavers of fate become the threads? Leto knew his house would